Thank you, everyone. We're glad that you're here. AV booth, are we ready to go? And you're black back there, I can't see, so I'm just guessing. There we go. Thank you. Flashing of the lights. All right, calling to order this policy committee meeting of March 20th, 2018. Call to order at 3:36 p.m. Apologize for the delay. We have one and only one, but it's not to be understated, the agenda item that we have today. This is a 3 to 3.5 year adventure of getting it right for city school students. So I invite up the individuals who are going to present to us on the school police policy. Chief, would you like some people to sit at the table with you to give you some solidarity?
I'm looking for Joe.
Joe's coming. Excellent. Thank you.
It
just felt like you were very lonely there in the audience all by yourself.
I don't want to steal Joe's thunder. Good evening, commissioners, chief of staff, people in the audience. We're here to discuss the school.
Chief, would you introduce yourself for the?
Sorry. Chief Akil Ham.
Thank you.
Joe.
Chief Ham, when we started this process, you were Major Ham, and
Yes,
then you
ma'am.
were acting chief. So
Yes,
to
ma'am.
give the community the understanding of the timeline of this and the amount of time we've taken to make sure we get it right.
Okay, so we've been working on this policy for, like you said, the last 2.5 to 3 years. We had some community stakeholders, ACLU, Disability Rights Maryland, Office of the Public Defender. They came up with some policy recommendations for us, some of which we agreed with, some we didn't agree with, some of them we kind of met in the middle. And what we wanted to do is look at not only what they recommended, but also best practices around the country in law enforcement. And Joe has been so gracious enough to help us with that, along with Ed Clark from the Maryland Center for School Safety. And he's been getting feedback from a lot of our stakeholders and community organizations to develop a new policy and to revise some of the general orders that we have. The ones that we currently have are kind of outdated. We kind of adopted policies from the Baltimore Police Department from 20 years ago. So a lot has changed when it comes to use of force, police interactions with youth, bias-based policing, racial profiling, and things of that nature. So, and I'll get into it in the presentation, but we really have been doing a lot of work in this area and a lot of reading. With respect to our policies. So what we wanted to do in our research, President Obama came out with the 21st century recommendations for policies for police departments. We wanted to encompass that with some of our policies. One that stands out is that our officers should not be involved in routine discipline. So that is something that we looked at and something that we've already started to implement, but we felt like it needed to be part of our policy. We've also did some consulting. I don't know if you all are familiar with Judge Teskey out of Georgia. He's one of the leading experts in school to prison pipeline. So a lot of school systems and police departments kind of follow his lead down in Georgia. So we've been in communication with him, and we're also setting up a trip to go down and kind of look at what that really looks like, other than just in writing. So that's in the works right now. We've also partnered with the Maryland Center for School Safety. They've been a real partner. Ed Clark, who's the executive director, has been doing a lot of work with our department for the last 2 years. He actually set some training up for us and paid for it through Maryland Center for School Safety. He actually set us up to get youth mental health first aid training, trauma training, and some other school resource officer training for our folks. And he's also currently working with myself and Joe and looking at the policies, that the best practices around the country. So as you can see, we've looked at from Atlanta to Detroit, from D.C. to the West Coast on best practices. The cities with the asterisks are the school police departments that we looked at, but we also looked at some of the regular traditional police department policies as well. So you can see we've done a lot of research in a lot of different cities.
Hi, Joe Strake, Board Liaison. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of how everything fits together because in a lot of my conversations with the community, there's been some questions about how everything fits. So the policy is basically just the overall umbrella of Chief Ham and Dr. Santelises' vision of what a school police force should look like, right? So that's broken up into these components. So that is overall mission and vision. The policy then dictates our general orders, which are the day-to-day operating procedures of our school police. So that's like their manual of how to be a police officer, if we look at our general orders that way. And then the accompanying administrative regulation is also kind of a mission and vision of our philosophy of reducing and avoiding the school-to-prison pipeline. So that's the way those three documents fit. The general orders will, as per this policy, become an administrative regulation, which means that it could be updated with the approval of the CEO rather than going through the three-reader process. And the reason that we have that is because state and federal law changes so quickly, so we don't want to go 5 or 6 years before we update the general orders again. We want to have the ability to update them with the shortened process of going to Dr. Santelises for approval. With that being said, the community is always in our hearts and in our mind when we come up with these things. So in the policy, we have it so that we'll have to provide 30-day notice before something goes into action. So we'll recommend something, it'll be 30 days, and then the CEO could sign off on it. So this way, although we're going around the policy first reader, second reader process, or in this case, board forum, policy first reader, second reader process, we're still going to have that community engagement piece. And this will also allow, as I said in the last presentation, for this to be the beginning of a conversation rather than these are the policies and this is the way it's going to be for the next 10 or 20 years. We know that that's not the case because we're always open to furthering the conversation.
So Joe, quick question on that one.
Sure.
Will there be a notification that goes out to all board members, heads up, this is a change that Dr. Santelises wants, or whoever the superintendent is at that point, wants to put in place, in addition to it just being posted?
That's a great question. So the procedure that we've operated under with policy committee in general, with just regulation updates since we started doing policy committee again, was to provide a written update to policy committee, and then Dr. Santelises would sign off on it. So that's basically kind of the model that we're looking to do again. So I'm imagining that we'll provide them policy committee as a written update, and then 30 days after that would be when it would become written into being, if you will.
So then for our colleagues, just to be aware of those emails coming, that the rest of the board doesn't get them. So when we get them, to make sure that we're disseminating that information.
And that's something that we'll work with the new board executive to make sure that it's on the full board's radar, and that could potentially be something that comes up in meetings with the CEO, with the board chair.
And again, I'm happy to take on that responsibility.
Great.
In the interim. I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't something that the public would possibly perceive was slidden through.
Gotcha. So then, as I said, the regulation is a standard regulation, unlike the general orders, which are kind of its own item unto itself. So these are the basic ways that the regulation is broken up into. So I'm not going to read those for you all here.
All right, so we've added some regulations that weren't, or some orders that were not in the policy that we already currently have. Some of the ones that stand out to me are individuals or students with disabilities. Also limited English proficiency with the growing ESOL population that we have. I felt like it was very important that we have a policy on how we interact with ESOL students, and also the LGBTQ and our diversion strategies. And I can tell you, just from the school police update that we did this morning, where the chief of staff was present, we've had about 300 diversions so far this year. to community conferencing and teen court. All of these were avoidance of criminalization of students. We've only arrested kids for the most serious offenses like handgun violations and sexual crimes, robbery, things of that nature. And we also at a 33% reduction in student arrests for the school year. So I think we're somewhere around 46, and we were like at 69 this time last year. So we're trending downward. If you look at the last 3 years, we went from 267 to 90 to 85, and now we're at 46, and the school year is almost over. So I think we're trending in the right direction, and part of this is putting policies in place, like I spoke of earlier, about not being involved in student discipline and letting the mental health folks deal with kids that are in crisis, and us just providing additional wraparound support that we can, and not being on the front line of things that are not criminal but that are discipline. Also, some of the revisions that we've made, because we have an MOU agreement with the police department, we refer all child abuse investigations and sex crimes directly to their detectives in the child abuse unit and the sex offense unit. So we needed to have that in our policy. That wasn't in our policy originally, and that's part of our MOU agreement, and it's also in COMAR that we turned them over. Also, we revised our rapid response to active shooter because we did redeploy officers back to schools, and officers that are permanently assigned are not armed during a regular day. They're armed before and after, so we had to reflect that in our policy. Also, reporting of incidents. We also created a general order that we did not have before, where it was mandatory if you're a police officer and you see a police officer either violate a policy, a law, or a general order, you have to report this to command, or you can be charged with violating policy for not reporting, and that's one of the ones that we added.
Thank you, Chief. If we could go back to the prior slide, just for 1 second, slide 7. Can you talk about the rationale for eliminating a civilian performance evaluation, or the possibilities for creating? In my perspective, we had an amazing, 3-year experience of getting community input. And community input was really pretty divided along 2 lines. Those that really believed and valued and wanted school police and wanted school police to be armed, and those that didn't feel police could be involved at all. I feel like a civilian performance evaluation might be a way to marry those two,
Right.
and help people build confidence in schools and school systems. So could you talk to that?
And to your point, I do agree, and I think that's why with the report card, we welcomed the school police report card with open arms from Youth as Resources, and now the Algebra Project, who's jumped on board, and they've added some additional questions to the survey that we already currently have. And as you are aware, Commissioner, it went very well. Most of the students felt like we were respectful and that we contributed to the climate and culture of the school building. With respect to the civilian performance evaluation, this particular one was an evaluation for our civilian employees, like dispatchers and secretaries and hall monitors. And because I have about 5 different unions under me,
Yeah.
all of them have different evaluation tools, and they're not really held to the standard of police officers. It's a little different.
So I'm conflating. This is not
Right.
a civilian review
Right.
board.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So is there a condition to implement, or the possibility within this policy of implementing a civilian review board?
We've been discussing doing surveys for not only students, but also parents, staff, and community stakeholders. I have looked at a couple other districts that have that tool, and that's something that I will probably have to talk to Teresa and OAA about implementing, because I do think it's important to get feedback from the community on the performance of our personnel. So to answer your question, it is something that I want to do, and we have, to go back to the report card, we have looked at individual schools and how they rated the officers that are at their buildings. we want to know if the officers are a good fit in the school, and if they're not a good fit, if we need to tweak it, or if they don't need to be there. Those are things that we want to know because we realize that we're providing a service to the community.
So I was reading this, and I apologize because I was reading it wrong, but now the conversation is going. Everything that came out in the testimony was that school police officers are making an impact on relationship with kids. So to me, it feels like if there's a violation or a perceived violation of general orders or protocol, to have a community within that school be the primary people to say, yes, you were supporting me, or no, you were not, makes the most sense. But that's a whole lot of layers of bureaucracy and things like that. So does this speak to that at all?
It's something that we can definitely look at. I can't give you an answer right now, but we can definitely look at it and get back to you and let you know. I'm not familiar with that process with any other department that we've looked at, and that doesn't mean that it's not something that we can't do. I just think I need to do a little bit more research on what you're asking me before I can give you a
And
definite
I will
answer.
say to any of our 5 public testimony folks and ACLU and things like that, if you're going to speak later, if you've got anything to weigh in on this, that'd be great. And again, it's not anti-police, it's about making sure that the police are able to have the tools they need to be effective in the schools.
Right. And again, in the update, and I'm not saying we don't have room for growth, because we definitely do, but I just want to share with you also that we have not had a civilian review board complaint filed on any of our officers in the last 2 school years, and that would be discourtesy, false arrest, excessive force. We met with Jill Carter, who was the director, and the comment that she made to me is that we need to train other police officers how to deal with kids and how to deal with people. So that's a comment that came from her, not me. And like I said, we do have room for growth, and we're always looking at ways to improve or do our jobs better, because I feel like we're trying to serve kids, so we want the best outcome for them. So I just wanted to share that with you, though, that we're...
No, and I appreciate that,
everything-
and I think we can be a model to the country.
Right. And I think...
And that's part of the reason that I want to get it down in paper.
Right. And a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in this policy, we've already implemented, but we're just putting it on paper and making it official, if you will. A lot of it we're already doing. We've already put policies out about roles and responsibilities. We've sent memorandums out. We've had principals and school-based officers sign off on them so that officers are not telling kids to take their hats off and pull their pants up and get out of the hallway, or not acting as if they're, bouncers or, something like that in the school. And so we're there to build relationships. It's been successful. We've recovered I think 5 guns this school year, and a lot of it, if it wasn't proactive policing, it was because a kid came and tipped us off, or they tipped the staff off.
Which is proactive policing, because they
Right,
had a relationship to come
right,
and make that
exactly.
statement.
You want to go to the next? Okay. And so we did, again, with respect to, and I keep saying this, the Esau population and other populations that are coming in, I felt like we needed to have a guidance document on how to deal with that. Our officers have had some training through Laura O'Hanion's office on dealing with folks that have limited English proficiency. We really needed to have something about understanding kids with disabilities, understanding people with disabilities, because we're not just dealing with kids. So I felt like that needed to be in the policy. Again, the de-escalation, I couldn't hit that. I'm hitting that very hard. We're working with Brother Ali, who does mindfulness and yoga and self-de-escalation. Our officers have had that training. I'm not aware of any police department. In my conversations with the chiefs around Maryland and internationally, and the chiefs that I speak with through the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, I don't know any police that are doing self-de-escalation and yoga. Like, this is something that's groundbreaking. It's something that's cutting edge. It's something that I've been talking to my colleagues about in the field, about you can't de-escalate somebody else if you can't de-escalate on your own. So those are some of the things that we've been doing proactively and that we want to put in our policy that we're coming in to diffuse. We're not coming in to inflame. So we want to bring people down. We don't want to take it where it doesn't need to go if we don't have to. And so those are some of the things that we've added to the policy in addition to, and also added information about filing complaints, because we do not want rogue officers or folks that should not be around kids around them. And so we want to share and let them know where they can go at should one of my officers violate a policy, how they can file a complaint with the Civilian Review Board, how they can file a complaint with us. We want them to be able to come in and know what they can do. And we've also did some work with Wide Angle Youth Media and the Public Defender's Office. And I don't have enough with me now, but if Captain Coleman's in the room, I'm sure he can go down and get some more. But we came up with this Know Your Rights little booklet. If I could just, oh, y'all did, so you're familiar with it? Yeah, so, you know, we have these and we pass these out to students. And so, I mean, we're very serious about doing what's right for kids.
And as Chief said, that little booklet actually is going to be, we're going to roll out as part of the adoption of the policy, general orders, and administrative regulation. We're going to have an accompanying guide for students about what this means for them. And that came out of our conversations with advocates after the board forum, as did all of these changes here that Chief mentioned. So the complaint process, there was already a general order for it. As everyone knows, there's 400 pages of documents that we've written and updated on there. So we heard time and time again that the complaint process needed to be something that was easier to find. So we put that right in the administrative regulation so that if people could easily pull that and find that. And that was the same reason for the disciplinary process. That's in a general order laid out in there, but we wanted it to be easily available for the public to see those two things, because that was what we heard from in our conversations with advocates. And that segues to the next slide. Community engagement has been a huge piece of this whole puzzle. Starting, 6 months ago, began the preliminary conversations. I know, as Chief said, our advocates wrote up their own policy a couple of years ago at this point, in conjunction with city schools. So that was kind of the building blocks of this whole process. So we're thankful for them for laying the groundwork on that. And the draft documents have been available since February 14th, with a few more added on March 5th. We had the board forum in this very room on a month ago to the day, and I'm still meeting with people on a pretty regular basis, getting feedback. Sometimes it's via email, sometimes it's phone calls, sometimes it's in person. So we're continuing that engagement process. I'm going to be meeting with the Associated Student Congress on April 4th, and also I have a meeting with Baltimore Algebra Project and Youth as Resources also on April 4th. So we're going to be getting a lot of youth voice in between now and first reader when this comes back to the board on May 9th. These are some of the groups that we've reached out to. We have some of the members of these groups in the crowd, so we always appreciate their support and voice. May 8th, excuse me. So that the next time we're going to be bringing everything to you all is Tuesday, May 8th, and then the second reader is Tuesday, June 12th. On May 8th, we'll also be bringing a glossary of all of our terms. As you can see, there are a lot of definitions throughout the general orders, throughout the policy, throughout the administrative regulations. So we're going to house everything in one document so people could easily find what a term means if they're looking for it. And then the other piece, as I promised, was a guide for our students about how this affects them and what their rights are as far as searching, as far as questioning. Everything will be covered in that document.
Joe, included in that document is some due process information for students, should they need or want to appeal.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So that's something that we heard from a lot of groups. And in my conversations with them, my question was, where does that go, right? Because it doesn't go in general orders because that's not part of the day-to-day manual of police. It doesn't really fit in with the philosophy and mission statement. But we don't want that to be something that our students aren't aware of. So that was actually the piece that made me say, we should provide this to the students. So due process will absolutely be a component in that document.
And related to community engagement, one of the things that I will be looking for at the annual policy review, because I have heard from, when we look at slide 11, especially the Maryland Coalition to Reform School Discipline Partners, I've heard from individuals within that group about, it's great that we're partnering with city school police to do trainings, but we've done like the millimeter deep, half a mile wide kind of training with them. So we'll be looking to see, like even just compliance on number of minutes, how deep did you go with de-escalation, especially around individuals with disabilities, knowing that there's ADA compliance is one thing, but how do you actually do role play and de-escalate a situation with an individual on the spectrum or an individual, with a cognitive impairment or processing disability? And I know from them informally, we haven't gotten to get to go that deep yet, but mostly it's been like, don't do this and this and this, and you won't break a law. And while that's a great place to start, it's not a great place to finish. So we'll be looking for some deeper training in that. Questions? Oh, any questions? Okay. So the question from the board that we have is, there's been specific call-outs in the consent decree from city schools police related to schools police. Can you touch on how we are complying, how we are addressing the consent decree from the Justice Department for Baltimore City School, or for Baltimore City Police, that specifically called out Baltimore City Schools?
Well, what I can tell you, Commissioner, is that we ended up in a consent decree because our officers 3 years ago were actually working in the district. They were actually working in the Eastern District, and Baltimore City Police was paying overtime for our officers to work from 5 in the evening to 1 at night. They were actually going to the roll call with the city police and going out on the street and taking posts in the neighborhoods. When one of our city schools police, then in that capacity, would say apprehend a young person, was it considered a city schools arrest or an Eastern District arrest? It wasn't considered a school-based arrest because that's what we track, the kids that we arrest in school. But the fact that we were working on the street is something that I stopped immediately once I took over. I can't speak to prior to me taking over and the thought with it. I know they were trying to support the city at the time because they were understaffed. But we immediately put an end to the Eastern District. And that is how we got in the consent decree. No one came and asked us any questions from DOJ about our relationship with the police department. A lot of the things that are in the consent decree, we already do. We write Baltimore City police reports when there's a complaint, and we just got a complaint about something the other day where it went to City Police Internal Affairs, who in turn contacted our Internal Affairs to look into an incident. So the communication is already there. I've had ongoing conversations with the police department because they have a DOJ compliance unit. I don't know what it looks like for our end, but in the consent decree, they have to show the relationship that we have and how we communicate. So the onus is not on us. The onus is on them to come up with a strategy on how we'll communicate and deal with each other. We actually fill out their racial profiling sheets when we stop citizens on the street, and we give them to the police department. We write their police reports, and we take them their police reports every day. So again, a lot of the things that they said, we already do, but no one asked us anything. Now, I'm sure they asked the community and they talked to the police department, but nobody talked to me. And the DOJ report came out after I was acting. So, I mean, we still having ongoing conversations, but just to give you some context, that's where all this is coming from, because our officers were working in the district, in patrol, and arresting people on the street. And that no longer happens. Now, we do have citywide jurisdiction, so if a crime is committed in our presence on the street, I'll give you an example because it happened to me. I was riding down 25th Street, and I got to 25th in Guilford, and a husband was beating his wife up with a 2x4. And I intervened and arrested the husband for domestic violence. But that was only because on my way back here from out checking schools, I happened to come across this and I saw this. So I acted on it. That's my own example. But what we were doing before, we're not doing now. I've had conversations with the police commissioner because he asked me in the meeting, because I go to the mayor's meeting every morning, the Violence Reduction Initiative meeting that she has, where all the city agencies are, and we're represented there. I've had conversations about him about not getting involved in that kind of stuff. Now, we do work Ravens games, we do work Oriole games, but that's covered through the Stadium Authority. And we work along with them, but it's through the Stadium Authority, it's not through the police department. So I hope that answers your question. And that's where the consent decree came from and our involvement in it.
I think it was just really important to just, because we were specifically listed
Right.
as a partner in that, to make sure that's
Right.
really clear for the public. Does that cover for you?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead with yours, and then I'll ask.
Chief, I want to congratulate you for all of the work that you're doing. This is a lot of work to do, so I just want to applaud you and your efforts and everything that you've been doing. With the ELL drafts that you're doing right now and working on, we have some populations that are vastly growing with Spanish-speaking residents. And this is relative, do we have officers that are Spanish-speaking that are in those particular areas that would directly align to the policy that we created outside of the calls that they would have to make?
Now, and thank you, Commissioner, again, for recognizing what we're trying to do. And it's not just me. I got a whole team of people that are busting their behinds every day. Yes, sir. But I can't do it without them. So I just want to just say that. I actually lost about 4 or 5 Spanish-speaking officers in the last 3 or 4 years. We are actively recruiting. I have been doing a lot of work with CASA, with Elizabeth, because there are sometimes when our kids come into conflict, especially in the Southeast Corridor and some of the schools, there's some tension, racial tension between kids, and we've been working with CASA on that. And I've had conversations in the past, even with Liz, and trying to recruit Hispanic officers, because the majority of my force is African American. But I do realize, and I do know, that we do need some folks that can speak other languages. And what we've done in some instances is work very closely with the Southeast District. I don't know if you're familiar with Colonel Melvin Russell, who has the Youth and Community Division. We've done some work with him in terms of some of his Spanish-speaking officers when there's an issue in the school, because 9 times out of 10, if there's an issue in the school, it's going to be in the community too, when kids are transitioning. So we are trying to work with folks where we don't have those resources, but we are actively recruiting, and we're trying to recruit officers. And Commissioner Hassan, I think we had a conversation like last year about that, the way we recruit and just trying to recruit more. And unfortunately, in this day and time, what we're starting to see is not like when I came on the job. I've been here for 18 years now. What I see is an officer may stay 2 to 3 years and leave and go to another department. And I see that a lot. They kind of bounce around to different departments like every 18 months. And I'm not making any excuses. That's just what's trending. And so just to answer your question, we are trying to recruit, and we are trying to recruit folks from different ethnicities to try to bring a balance to what we have, because we recognize it. Especially in the Northeast Corridor, we're seeing not just Spanish, but kids from Africa, kids from different countries, Brazil and other areas that are coming here. And Northeast is heavily populated because we do our national night out at the Goodnow Community Center. And you can see somebody from all over the world in that neighborhood, in Garden Village, in Goodnow, up by Beachfield, Syrians. So it's a lot of different nationalities that we're starting to see, and we're trying to recruit from different backgrounds on.
So can you call out for the public good, is there anything in this policy that specifically references the necessity or obligation or disobligation of city schools police to report to ICE?
I don't think it's anything in the policy. Maybe that's something we need to look at, Joe. We don't have anything right now. I think we've been honorably following what the previous mayor put out, that we're not going to report anybody to ICE and demand IDs. Most of the time, when we interact with kids, that process is already done with documentation and all that kind of stuff before we even interact with these kids. But we're not calling ICE on any students. But we need to look at
A policy
adding
would
something.
give the opportunity for an officer in a situation to look at an
Right.
ICE agent and say, I'm sorry, I have a policy that means I can't reveal any of this. Moving on.
So me and Joe can look at that and
So if
research
that could be looked at,
I'm not opposed to that at all.
So a couple other quick pieces. We talked about originally in this document some information on what was going to be required to become a city schools police officer as far as academic attainment, whether you took the AccuPlacer, is there anything that remained that you could share with the public that would hit
Right
to-
now, no. And just for transparency, Commissioner,
Yeah.
I have 10 vacancies and I only have 105 positions. And I have medical folks that are on light duty that are not in the school. We're significantly down. The background process that we have is already rigorous. We'll start with 100 people that take a test and end up hiring one.
Right.
So, I'm
Yeah.
open to looking at all these things, but I'm telling you, from the written test to the physical agility to the oral interview to the polygraph to the psychological to the physical, we're losing people just in that process.
And the agility and the physical are gone out of this policy,
No,
correct?
no, they are. They're still as a state mandate that we do a physical agility. No, I'm not talking about a weight
Physical
requirement.
fitness.
I'm talking about, you have to do so many push-ups, so many sit-ups.
And you can
that's
be as
something-
big as you want to be able to do
Right.
that. As long as you can knock it out,
Right,
you're good.
Right.
Okay.
As long as you can do it, it's fine. But that's a Police and Correctional Training Commission regulation that we have to do before they even go into the police academy, where we lose people in the academy. That's 6 months. And then after they finish the academy, they have 12 weeks of field training that we may lose somebody on. So right now, it's already a process where it's really hard to get a good candidate after they go through this entire process. And I'm not saying we're just going to hire anybody, but I'm just sharing with you that it's not as easy as people, like, we're not just hiring people off the street saying, no, we talk to your previous employer, we go to your neighborhood, we talk to your neighbors, we look at your criminal record, we look at your credit, we look at your military experience, whether or not you've been to captain's mast or whether or not you've been disciplined in the military. We look at, depending on what your age is, we actually go to the high school and talk to principals if they're only 5 years removed from high school. So, I mean, it's very rigorous already what we do, as opposed to what some people may think. It's really hard to get a good police officer. And we lose a lot of them at the interview process because we have a panel of police officers and a civilian that are sitting there questioning a person off the street about what their experience is with child care. That question is on the interview. What experience do you have working with kids? How would you deal with a child in crisis? What steps would you take? So we're asking those questions on the front end before they even get to the place where we say we're going to offer you a job. So we want kids, police officers, to have experience working with kids, not just their own kids, because like I tell a lot of them, these are not your kids. You can treat them like they're yours, but they're coming from different challenges and different situations, and we have to have people that know how to deal with kids accordingly with some of the struggles that they're bringing to the table because they come as is.
So the onboarding question that I have then around that is, within the policy, how do we onboard police officers? And this is coming from the resounding feedback we got about how entrenched and how awesome police officers are in schools as mentors and as guidance tools. How are we onboarding police officers to ensure they understand the curriculum that's being taught in that school? And by way of that, and to further it, there's conversation about a PPT, a parent to paraprofessional to teacher to principal pipeline. Are we actively engaging and including our officers in a police to paraprofessional to teacher to administrator pipeline to make sure that these people who are invested in the lives of our young people, who understand where our young people are coming from and the crisis they're dealing with and the opportunities that they have, are being able to leverage that in an academic realm?
I like that idea, Commissioner. I really do. No, we're not doing that right now. I
Let's
do
get
like
Morgan
it, and I'm
State
open.
and you and I together, and let's make that happen.
And I'm really open to it. And I mean, Ed Clark will tell you from the Maryland Center for School Safety, because he said it to me. He told me that we're the most trained police department in all 24 jurisdictions that work with kids in schools. So I don't know what kind of feedback you're getting from the community, but what I can tell you from my standpoint, and it's posted on the website, we've not only had training from some of our stakeholders like Disability Rights Maryland, but we've also, like I said before, we've had, and it's ongoing, mindfulness, institutional racism, building quality connected relationships with kids, youth mental health first aid. One of my staff members is certified in crisis prevention intervention, and they're doing training for other staff members in the school. They just did a de-escalation training for food service workers because Liz recognized that there were some challenges with the food service workers working with kids, and so we came in, we did training for them because we're certified, and they actually get a card to say that they're certified through CPI in decision making. So a lot of that training is ongoing. Again, we want to be the best school police department that we can be, and I do like the ideas that you're bringing to the table, and we do need to have some kind of pipeline, and I firmly believe in that. My captain will be the first person in the history of our department to go to Northwestern Traffic Institute School, which is it's like the #2 training for commanders and police departments in the world. That's offered through Northwestern University, and I think it's a 6-week program or maybe an 8-week program. It's 10 weeks? Okay, it's a 10-week program, and so I'm trying to build capacity from the top to the bottom.
I think
So I'm a firm believer in that.
restaurants in Chicago I can help
Right.
you out with.
Right.
Excellent. All right, other questions? Okay, anything else from you all?
No, ma'am.
Other than to say extreme gratitude to Joe, to you, to Ed Clark, to the community who came out not once, not twice, but weeks after weeks after weeks to share in what they thought needed to happen here. I really want to promote this. I really think that Baltimore can be the cutting edge of this. And hopefully, the percolated outcome results are less violence, less incarceration of our young people, and greater academic achievement, which is what we're here for in the first place. So,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you so much.
Thanks.
I just wanted to also reemphasize how appreciative I am of all the staff work that went into this. Joe and Chief Ham spent a huge amount of time engaging the public, going over documents, looking at best practice in other places. I mean, from where we started when Sonny and I came in with a lot of community engagement, but that then we needed to kind of like work that into the general orders that existed, and that was an overwhelming task, and so we've done that now, and so I really can't say enough how much I appreciate the work that staff put into this.
Thank you.
And then I would love to get this many people in the room for a policy committee meeting on, say, reading standards. This is a hot button issue that brings people out, but academics are the core of what schools need to be able to be doing. So a call out to the community to say, if you needed to come out for this, come out for that too. Because that's what's going to matter in the long run, is moving that needle. So thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
We now have, for the very first time, a full docket of public speaking at the policy meeting. So I will invite Mr. Salam Abdul. Are you here? Excellent. You are welcome to join us, and once we get the ticker tape going on there, you have 3 minutes to share with us all of your wealth and wisdom. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this topic at the board meeting. I think it's very important. My name is Abdul Salam once again. I'm a community member. I'm a parent, and also I'm a founder of a community mental health organization that partners with our schools, and we do a lot of volunteer work in the schools, and from high school all the way back down to elementary and in between. And we are very confident in the abilities of our school police and confident in they're necessary. And we see this through the engagement process in the schools and outside of the schools, right? We often do a lot of volunteer efforts that engage children, and we see the effect of the school police being able to come out proactively and build those relationships, because when it comes to crises, it's all the rapport that you have with an individual, whether child or adult, is one of the fabrics that allows individuals to be able to be brought down to a baseline behavior, what have you. And this creates a healthy environment, right? When you don't have to have a child go through a traumatic experience such as an arrest or going to a police precinct and things of this sort. So through the relationships, we value that in our community. As a parent and as a mental health provider, and as a trainer, we see the effect that Baltimore City School Police has had within the school. So we're pro, and we appreciate the training. Actually had several conversations with Chief Ham as a mental health provider about some of the trends and things of this sort and trainings that they may want to seek. I have certification as a trainer through Cornell University. And so once again, we're just appreciative, and we look for more proactiveness from Chief Ham as he's been a leader and doing in the community. So once again, thank you, and we look forward to continuing and progressing in this conversation.
Thank you so much. Question from Commissioner Berkeley.
I don't, if you did, I lost it. Did you mention the name of the organization?
Keys Empowers.
Keys and Powers.
Yes.
Thank you.
KEYS stand for something?
Keep encouraging youth to succeed.
There we go.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And our next guest to the podium, unless you have anything else.
Did you say what schools?
Oh,
Did you
there
say
you go.
what schools you were in?
We're in Connections, Green Street Academy, and Mary Ann Winterling.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank
Excellent. Thank you for your support of city schools. Majid Mohammed? Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
My mama always said, beware of a man in a hat.
Okay. You got it.
That was my shout out to my police officers in the crowd who were like, a man doesn't wear covering doors.
I appreciate you giving me that opportunity to come and speak. I came out to speak about the issue of fear. There is a fear that some of my students, before I came, I left a group of students and I asked them what they would like me to be able to verbalize, with them not being able to verbalize it themselves. Their fear is around actual police officers, Baltimore City police officers, policing them in environments where they are comfortable. There's automatically, unfortunately, in our today, the tone of today with Baltimore City Police, with the interactions with our kids. There is a fear that is real and resonates with our kids. That same fear leads too often to bad situations and bad responses to police officers intervening appropriately with our kids. That fear does not exist with our Baltimore City School Police. So that fear of having to interact with city police in a school environment is something that my kids ask me to express. What I would like to express as a parent, and again as a clinician, would be that if we are aware of something that's working so well, would we dare to change it when we know where we came from? 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I know the experiences as I was an employee in Baltimore City. I know the experience that our kids had with Baltimore City, with our city school police. And it's not the same. What we're doing is working. So if we're going to make any changes to our city school police, I would ask that we do more to fund the efforts and to fund more police officers actually being in our schools, because one, we count on them. We not only count on them in the schools, but we count on them in the community. Because what I do know, in the Bentlow area, we can count on not only city school police at the school, but if there's an event going on in the community, we encourage them, and they always respond to keep us safe and make all of our community members feel safe, not just in the school, but in the community as a whole. I appreciate the opportunity.
Can you tell us what school you're with or what students you just left? So, in your organization? So
Organization is Keys.
Oh, the Keys. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
organization is Keys. The students that
And it's in those three schools you mentioned.
I just left actually were from the combination of kids from Matthew Henson and kids from the Booker T.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I think you have a great point in understanding the fear of institutions. And there is a disconnect and there is a disengagement that is incredibly imperative to schooling. You know, we need parents with us. We need grandparents with us. We need community members that do not have kids in schools with us. And so if we can be a model to Baltimore City about engaging with institutions and use this as a platform to help make that happen, I think we can have a win-win a lot of ways around in the community. So thank you so much.
Agreed, I appreciate it.
Our next guest this evening is Camilla Carnes. Well, yourself?
So I'm Principal Carnes. I'm from the principal. I lead Joseph C. Briscoe Academy. It's our 6 through 12 for students with an emotional disability. So we took the school back. It was a contract school about 2 years ago. And so I have to say that I currently do not have an officer in my building. And so we have had to really focus on culture and climate. And so what I really want to say is that I'm here to attest how valuable school police is, but I also want to talk about school safety. And so keeping students safe allows students to look forward to being in a school environment. I think it's encouraging. I think it promotes social and creative learning. When their safety needs are not met, students are not comfortable coming to school. For a variety of reasons, because maybe someone's bothering them or because they're not being successful academically. I think that they kind of remain on edge throughout the day. Because of the school that I lead, I see that edginess. I see where they're triggered because someone said something to them or they're not feeling safe and comfortable. And it doesn't give them the option to learn and grow. Students' first encounter with school police can have a lasting effect on how they interact with school police in general. I have to say that many of my young students spoke to me passionately about making sure that I give their voice today about the impact that we've had at our particular school with developing the relationships with school police. Chief Ham, Officer Braxton, Officer Black, the dispatcher, Terry Warren. When I call, they immediately come, but they're not coming to help me resolve disciplinary issues. They're coming to support and continue to build relationships with my kids. So within the 2 years Our level of calls to school police, our level of suspensions have drastically decreased almost by 80%, because they have been a partner with me, making sure that they're coming in, we're having conversations, we're meeting with parents, we're meeting with the community. They're helping me resolve the conflicts, not create the conflicts. The officers do not come in with the thought pattern, I'm going to arrest a kid. They're coming in to support me. So I really just want to say that I would not have been able to continue the work where I'm at if it hasn't been for the officers and school police in general. They have really built strong relationships with my students, my staff, and my community, and they're just greatly needed in the school to continue the work that has been going on. So I just want to say thank you to all of them, because I probably would be somewhere else in a funny farm today if it wasn't for them supporting me. It was been rough, and so we're finally making momentum, but they're a part of that momentum.
Thank you, Ms. Carnes.
You're welcome.
As a former level 4 and 5 teacher for many years, and heard your impassioned testimony at Highland 235, how many years ago?
Yes.
When we started this, appreciate your contributions today and the work you're doing every day for city school
Thank you.
students. Thank you.
Any other questions before I get up?
No, I just want to thank you too. Having one of our great principals come and talking about from the school level is really helpful. So thank you for taking the
matters.
time after
Yeah.
school. It really is helpful.
And also happy to welcome your students at any point, in any way we can engage them in this policy, or say the social media policy that's coming up next.
We're working on getting our stuff
Uh-huh.
together. We're almost there.
Well, if you need me to come to you, I can do that. So we can talk offline.
Yep, definitely.
All right. Amanda White.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Amanda White. I'm a staff attorney at Disability Rights Maryland, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Coalition to Reform School Discipline. First of all, we would like to thank City Schools, Mr. Strake, Chief Ham, for working with us, Captain Coleman, in our most recent meeting to discuss these policies. We have been working for a number of years with City Schools because we feel very strongly that if City Schools is going to make the decision to have school police, then there must be clear and cogent policies that really outline for both our officers, but also for our students, our families, and our administrators, what are the expectations for each other's roles in the building, and then also what are the procedures that we have to follow that are going to ensure everyone is staying in their lane, and also that students' due process rights are upheld. We're continuing to review these policies. So we'll still be giving oral testimony at upcoming meetings, and we'll be providing written comments and continue to work with City Schools about this. But 3 things that I wanted to address today for you, areas of concern that we have. The first being that we're concerned that a number of the policies that are specifically geared towards students, such as Miranda warning, diversion programming, dealing with students with disabilities, is in the general orders, and we think that those need to be moved to the board policy. We think it's incredibly important. That's where our families, that's where our administrators go to look to see what are our policies, and we're concerned about them being buried in general orders, even if it is an administrative regulation about what that looks like, given that general orders typically has been how does a police officer act? So that's the first one. The second thing that we're asking is that there be a revisitation of the Miranda warning. We're very concerned that this Miranda warning policy is not geared specifically to youth. So there are jurisdictions that have youth-specific Miranda warnings that is age-appropriate and developmentally appropriate for students who we know, due to their age, are potentially at risk of coercion. And then the third thing that I wanted to bring up today is that in our practice, we've realized that we've been getting some recent calls around the use of consent searches. So consent searches being where the school police have gone to a student's family's home and asked for permission from whoever's home to search that house. And so we have real concerns about that use and opening up students and their families and kind of the intrusion into their privacy. And so we are asking for the board to pass a policy that would ban the use of consent searches. In the alternative, if that's a step that the board is not willing to take, we are asking that there would be a developed, detailed protocol for obtaining consent, including the waiver of one's search and seizure rights, that both the student and the parent would be informed about. So, thank you.
Commissioner
Oh.
Berkeley?
It's not, I can't even formulate a question because that's a lot, and this
It
is
is.
new to me. So I thank you for coming, and I will get myself educated and ask a question another time. Thank you.
So my question comes from the fact that the general orders are a gigantic document. Is it possible for us to craft a series of one-pagers that would be not policy, but highlight out of the general orders, like you want to know, my kid was just, is being questioned. Here's your rules, your responsibilities, your privilege. Things about due process, about the steps from if your child is arrested at school, here's what you can expect. Is it possible we could create some one-pagers that families could very clearly access that help them sift through the general orders without having to go to make this a policy that's a redundancy on top of the general orders that align with police keeping in the state?
So what we've talked about, and I see Joe back there, and you're welcome to join, Joe, if you want to come out, but we've talked about, building on the Know Your Rights materials that we talked about, that idea, also developing some documents about what this means to students, so that it kind of lays out what are the key things that students need to know in the document that's like most applicable to them in their daily life as students.
Yeah, it
So
just seems
kind of
like
more
that.
easily
And it also
accessible.
seems like there might be a great one-pager about teachers. Here's how, because the challenge we heard over and over again is that school police were asked to be enforcing discipline. That's not a problem with the school police, that's a problem with the teachers. In looking to the school police to say, well, he has gum, you deal with them. So some series of just easily accessible, kind of resource.
I have three responses to that. So one, in the policy, we added, based on feedback and under the compliance report, that once a year we would circulate to all of our principals the MOU that clearly delineates the responsibilities between our officers and their role in the school. And Chief Ham sent that about 2 years ago, and the suggestion from our advocates was that there's such high turnover of principals that they might not know. So that was added to the policy where yearly, in the beginning of school, we're going to send that out to our principals so that they all know when to call our school police officers. The second piece is the one-pager idea is great, and that is precisely what we had in mind when we said we were going to roll out the student. And we could also have one for teachers as well, about certain things like due process protections, consent searches, all those things can go in what people are constitutionally afforded to. And the third piece was in response to something that you said, and I don't remember what it was right now, but so there's that. But we're working on all cylinders, and if I remember, I will talk about it.
As a
on
woman
May
of a
8th.
certain age, I have wholehearted respect for that. Perhaps it'll come to you as I offer up, instead of just sending that information to principals, send it to the coordinators of all recognized student organizations as well.
And
Because
that
sometimes
reminded me.
principals don't talk to the algebra club in their, or the algebra project committee, or the choir or band, but that's a way to get it directly disseminated to students as well as through PCAB.
Okay, and you reminded me of the other missing component. Thank you, appreciate it. So in our meeting with our advocates, it was suggested that we should and if you could see at our in-service training, our officers are super well-trained. As Ed Clark always says, we have the best-trained officers in the state of Maryland. That's something that we're working on, is developing a professional development for our teachers. So at the suggestion of one of our advocates, we shared everything with our whole child office, so they're currently reviewing it. And in conjunction with them, we plan on having a rollout as a professional development on the interact of how school police should be utilized within a school building. So that's something that we are currently working on as well.
Fabulous. I will also look to see an article in the Urban Educator from the Council of Great City Schools and in the National School Boards Association. This work is big. This work is important. This work has had a whole lot of really valuable people involved, and we need to spread that message.
And if I may, I want to be clear in terms of our ask. We appreciate the development of materials. We certainly want to make sure that our students and their families are informed of their rights, but we do think that it is important to have board oversight of these policies that are very specific to interacting with students. So that is why our request is to move that from the general orders to a board policy. And we'll follow up with a list of the specific policies that we would like to see incorporated into board policy and removed from general orders.
Perfect, and we appreciate that. You may or may not see all of them incorporated, but know that we will look at them and we will take it very, very seriously. Thank you so much. And our last guest tonight is Deborah Furholden. Is Deborah here? Going once, going twice, 3 times a lady. Oh, okay. At that, then, we are going to wrap up this meeting, going to the next policy meeting, in which where we will be discussing, and it's not on my list anymore, and it's not in my notes. Do you have a quick, Allison? Or Tanisha, do you know? Oh, it's up at the top.
Staff
It's at the top.
political.
Yeah, thank you.
Got it.
We will be discussing on April 17th, which is my brother's birthday, policy GBI, staff political activity, JJL, student political activity, and long-range financial planning. And I would love to put out a plea again to get some students to come talk to us about how they would like their voices heard, as well as how they would like their voices protected. So if anybody's out there and wants to testify on that, that'd be great. Otherwise, we are officially adjourned at 4:41 p.m. Thank you all so much for being here.